Good afternoon slash good morning slash good evening, depending on where everyone is from at the moment. Um, we have a very interesting sort of collection of people coming from a very interesting collection of places. So Ben is in the US at the moment. So that's exciting. But first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to our first Virtual Excursions Australia meeting. And for the last few years, we've liked to sort of do this little bit of an extended meeting and have some speakers coming in from both domestic and overseas to give us a bit of an update of what we might be expecting for 2024, what the teachers and our audience are after, and also a bit of an update on a bit of a case study per se, which we've got from the Alaskan Sea Life Centre today. So we are going to have a bit of a chat and discussion how things have went in 2023, how things are looking for 2024, and what we're kind of expecting. We had, the COVID years with a really massive increase in what we saw with our numbers, and how that's continuing, whether it's changing directions. I've certainly noticed we've got C Week coming up next week and getting a lot of early child care centres, which is something we hadn't seen a lot of before. I know that for National Science Week last year, and especially for this year, we're looking at marketing into aged care facilities and also sort of the retirement centres, as well, to get again that older market as well. So there are some changes that we are seeing, and certainly looking at the numbers and how that go. So I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on where we're all coming for today, whether we're from Australia or overseas, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging leaders, and anyone with Indigenous heritage that joins us here today. We are coming from a lot of different places, and there'll be lots of different people watching the recording for those that couldn't attend with us in person. So we are just waiting on a few more participants to arrive, but I think we will continue going with a little bit of background on Virtual Excursions Australia. So, Ben, what is it now? I think we kind of started informally in 2009, but really it was 2011 when we kicked off.
Yeah, it was absolutely. So those people who were hanging around back at the time, Bonnie, I see you. You're one of them. We were up in Cairns, Queensland, for a conference at the time called QuestNet, which is still running, an IT conference up in Queensland. And us distance learning types hung out in a room, and we'd been hanging out for nearly 2 years prior. But we thought, you know what, let's formalize what a group could look like in terms of helping all the various different providers across Australia make great distance learning content. And it's now 2024. So we're still doing it.
And it feels like, only a minute ago when I first unpacked the equipment at the Australian Museum that was been in the loading dock for years. And I thought, let's just give this a go. And with the support from Dart Learning, we got up and running, which is very exciting, and from there, we haven't looked back. And in terms of Virtual Excursions Australia, really our mandate is still the same thing: helping support our community, helping support our teachers, and learning from each other. So that was probably one of the really great things, being in those first few years when we went to some of the conferences, is just being able to talk to each other about what worked, what didn't. And of course, there are things that didn't work in 2011, which are 100% the things that we would use now. Very big changes in the last few years in terms of not needing the big hefty codecs and hardware, and being able to use more software-based platforms. And yeah, really big changes enabling us. Well, you're in a hotel room, Ben.
Yes, I am on poor Wi-Fi and still able to do it.
I've moved, so it hasn't affected the fact that I can still deliver the same programs from, an hour from where my studio was before. Trying to get my lighting sorted out. There's a lot of things that, from people that have done our training sessions about hard surfaces and lighting and audio. So that's still being refined in a new place. But, we're able to really deliver content anywhere, anytime. And I think everyone that's here today from both Australia and North America is a testament to that, being able to have these programs really broad reaching, which is absolutely fabulous. So in terms of Virtual Excursions Australia in 2023, we ran some key programs, and we've seemed to have got a little bit into a pattern in terms of what we've been able to self-fund, what we've been able to get grant funding for. So the three or four big events that we tend to be doing is Sea Week, which we have on in March in Australia, usually about the second week of March. So it's a nice one that we can do early on in the year. Then the next big focus is National Science Week, which we've been very lucky for the last few years to be able to have funding for. And then we look at Earth Science Week. And the last 2 years, we've had funding from Geoscience Australia, which of course is, if we're thinking of earth science, is the place to go, based in Canberra, and we help support them with content, and we do have funding for 2024 as well. So that is really exciting as well. There are certainly other programs that we are continuing to look at. So if you do have any ideas of collaborations or grant funding that is available, that as a not-for-profit, Virtual Excursions Australia often can get access to some of that funding when individual organisations might not be able to. So Ben and I are always putting our heads together looking for new grant opportunities, especially thinking about outreach. Equity of access are some of the really key areas that we want to be able to support. And that's the things that we'll continue looking forward for. And in 2024, we've got Sea Week, as I mentioned, coming up next week. Very interesting to see the change in dynamic of some of the groups that are booking, that hopefully Bonnie can let us know a little bit more about that later on this afternoon. And then we have, as I mentioned, funding for Geoscience Australia for Earth Science Week in October, and we're just awaiting on the grants funding for Science Week to open up. So again, a few other opportunities that we'll be looking at as well, but also just great ideas for collaboration. So if there are any programs that you're running individually as an organisation, let us know. We can help market and support those, either with a webinar platform, Kahoot platform, that all of our Virtual Excursions Australia members get access to as well. So there's some great opportunities for us to work together and to be involved in 2024 and beyond. And I can't believe it is March on Friday. It has really snuck up on us. I'm not sure if everyone else feels how quickly the year has gone. But I might just throw back to you, Ben, in terms of some of the home learning sessions you were doing in February and March.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is something that every organization, whether you're watching the recording or live, can consider. The homeschooling network is growing rather quickly. In fact, I saw a stat, and you know what stats are, you got to go find the stats and see if it's right. But I read something like there's now 5 million families in the US alone now homeschooling, and I suspect this Australia is going to keep on continue to grow as well. So my other organization, Physics, has been doing a lot of science at home outreach, or video conferencing, basically out to the homeschooling world. And so it's one thing to consider. In case you're wondering what that might be like, it is going to be like homeschooling face to face. You're going to have broad range of ages, but definitely consider doing a hard split between high school and primary. We're also finding that from a location point of view, it's not all east coast of Australia. We've had a little bit in New Zealand, all the way across to Perth. We had last year we had a couple of US families. I think they're watching the recordings. But it's just something to be aware of, that it's definitely an avenue. And so as we think about retirement homes and all these other places, honestly, anyone with a camera and a microphone can get involved with this stuff, as long as they've got internet that's stable. So I think that all these people, I can see quite a few good friend names across the top of the panel here. I do know that we can also take leadership from you guys, from where you're doing your stuff, and want to sort of share what we're doing along here. So we're going to kick off this chat. We've got a couple of people coming in from the US. I'm currently in California presenting at some schools in California right now. So I'm feeling your time zone, Tammy, this year there. But I am going to flick very, very much. I'll put Tammy on spotlight real soon. But Tammy Moring has been a very good friend of mine for many years from the Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration. Oh, there you go. You're on camera. Karen said you're on camera, so be it. I mean, Tammy will totally introduce what CILC is, but there is a reason it says 30 in her virtual background. They've been doing this for a very long time. A lot of museums, lots of different places involved, and I've been lucky enough to hang out with Tammy in person, not in virtual, in San Antonio and Philadelphia and a few different areas, and she does a wonderful job. So, Tammy, let the world know what you get up to. I'll go hide now.
Thank you, Ben, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you all for having me be a part of your amazing event today. As Ben said, I am Tammy Mori. I'm the Director of Member Relations at CILC, the Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration. Our goal is to connect amazing providers like yourself, organizations from around the world, individuals, and our organizations are museums, science centers, zoos, aquariums, authors, yoga instructors, anyone, like Ben said, that has a camera and a device and a topic to talk about. We connect them to our amazing members from around the world. As a member relations director, my job is to work with amazing content providers like yourself, who are my main focus, along with our members from around the world. So I get to work with both sides of the coin to see what's out there. And so today I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to go over a little bit of information about who CILC is, kind of a little bit of a background of what we do. I'm going to provide you with some data based on the last school year. And it's going to follow a July to June cycle for us. That's just because it's our fiscal year when it comes to CILC. And then I will share that Google slide deck out in the chat. And then I'll also make sure that Karen and Ben have it for those of you that are watching the recording to be able to access afterwards too. Of course, you are more than welcome to my contact information. Well, I will make sure to provide that at the very last slide for you to look at too. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Got it up there. Go ahead and play it. Here we go. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of about CILC when it comes to big numbers, we have 60,000 active members in over 112 countries from around the world. One bubble says 100, but if you go down to the details, 112 as of right now. We have 200 content providers from around the world, like I said, representing those various organizations. Since CILC has been collecting data, we are now offering from those 200 content providers, 2,300 virtual field trips are currently right now active on the CILC website for members to find and book. CILC has a live streaming service where we try to reach as many individuals as we can. We have our programs that our content providers have in a database that they provide at a date and time that works for them. And then we also have a community of learning, which is part of our mission at CILC as a nonprofit to make distance learning accessible to everyone. Since we started in 2020 as a reaction to everyone being shut down in their homes, and we wanted to find a way to connect students, we have reached over 400,000. And last time I looked at the stats, I think the data was around 421,000 students since 2020. So it's a pretty good rate. 25% of the programs that are delivered on the CILC website are free, which is always a good indication that if you do charge for your program, a majority of the programs that are booked have a cost associated with them, and our members are willing to pay for them. So there is the ability to bring in revenue for your programs. We have reached, and 3.5 million students have been engaged in our programming over the years. So CILC provides three big ways for our members to get involved. One of them is through the virtual field trips. that our content providers provide. They're in the database. Members search them, find them, and request them at a date and time that works for both them and you to deliver them as a content provider. We have our live stream series. Those are our mission-based programs, and they are an opportunity for not only for us to meet our mission, but for you as a content provider to advertise your programs. We consider it a taste test for those individuals to experience your program in a webinar style format, but then take it to the next level and go in depth with you as a content provider in a one-on-one format. So it's a way to get you started. These programs for the content providers can be seasonally based, or they can be a shorter or kind of demo style if they so choose to do so. We do have content providers that do a traditional program that they normally would have a charge for, but this is also an opportunity as a content provider sometimes to test some new things out before you start charging people for those particular programs. And then CILC has a collaboration space where we connect our members to each other on a variety of topics that they would like to do. But it's kind of like a match.com for them to connect with each other and have that interaction. So who is booking those programs on CILC? So CILC started at the very beginning with our bread and butter, which is the K-12 audience, that education audience. And when it comes to them, they book 90% of our programs. And if we were to break that down even more, because K-12 is a big number and grades like different things, K through 5 or that primary or younger grades is the powerhouse when it comes to CILC and the programs that they book. So I always tell content providers, if you're going to start doing programs on CILC, the first group to target is that K through 5 basis. They're going to get you started and up and running. And then if you look at the upper grades, 6th through 8th and 9th through 12th, which is in the United States, we would call them middle schoolers and high schoolers. They do about 40% of the programming, 20% each. That may fluctuate up and down a little bit, but it is steady at about 40% of the programs that they are booking. 7% are lifelong learners. So those we consider 55 and plus. And they can be individuals that are at home learning. They can be individuals that go to a community center to engage with other lifelong learners and connect for a distance learning program, or they could be individuals that are residents in a community where they are there full-time enjoying programming from us. This number has doubled in over the years. So since about 2020, we have seen an increase greatly in lifelong learners, and CILC continues to plan to target and use these as one of our greatest audiences that will continue to grow. As Ben mentioned, homeschooling is growing, and so we're looking at them too. But also we know, especially in the United States, but in other areas, it used to be, you would have more and more generations would get, more children, but people are not having as many children as they used to. So that triangle is kind of flipping over, and there's going to be an older generation that's going to have a much bigger population than the younger generation. And they want to stay actively engaged, and they want to be able to continue to learn just as they were, no matter what age they're at. So this is kind of the latest data from the 2022-2023 academic year. It just shows the number of programs that were booked and who's delivering those programs. I did mention, I forgot that there's a 3% community groups. Those would be those mixed age groups. A lot of times they're libraries and scout groups that are of various groups. So from K, or kindergarten we call it in the United States, all the way up to grades, the older individuals are taking those programming. So you can see that number right in here. These are, CILC always looks to make sure we're continuing to gain more and more members in the United, from around the world. This is just looks at kind of the number of individuals that have joined CILC over that time period. Of course, we have a big uptick. Kind of most of it is related in the United States to the beginning of that school year. So you see September as a highlight. You also see that right after January, we do have a little bit of a bounce as people look at that new year in the calendar and kind of get back at it. We average around 3 individuals every day that are joining CILC and getting started. These individuals are receiving a newsletter and finding out every Sunday what all of you as great content providers would be providing to them from our organization. So who is booking these programs? So we know the audience, but where are they? So our number one booker, even though you kind of think of us out of the United States, the top country that is booking programs in the for us is actually Canada. And if you look at this group, one of the biggest powerhouses is an organization that connects First Nation youth. So those all mostly in the Arctic Circle are very remote areas to providers out there. They are looking at opportunities to take their youth or their students to places they would never be able to physically go unless they were to drive in a car for a long, long time or hop on a plane, which is very hard for them to do. They continue to be a powerhouse, and it is also a great way for you as an organization or an individual to show you are reaching disenfranchised youth or individuals who do not have a chance to usually get to you. You can now reach them. If you look at the next couple of groups, New York, Indiana, Ohio, they're kind of on the East Coast if you think about the United States. So there is sometimes these groups are willing to do programming toward the end of the day, which makes it a little bit easier for you in Australia to do that programming based on the time zone. But these individuals have a very good network and system that supports their teachers and gets them up and running on doing their distance learning. And because of that, when those teachers book those programs, they will take it year after year after year after year as they put it into their curriculum and find a way to do that. This is just a breakdown of those bookings a little bit more. Like I said, I'll give you access to all these details too with that. This right also here, the next couple of slides just breaks down the top booking sites and kind of who is doing it in each of those areas. So you can note where they are. And as a content provider on CILC, you would get all of these stats delivered to you every quarter. So every 3 months and at the end of every year, we provide this to you. So here's a couple more of those top sites you'll see around with, you know, all those. And it breaks it down as you go through place to place. You can really see the powerhouses. And with that, you're able to do targeted marketing to those variety of areas. But if we look at the program so that they are booking, what they're looking at, that kind of a little bit of information about it, we can see that the top subject areas are science, social studies and history, and problem solving. Those 3 subject areas have been dominant and at the top of CILC for statistics and subject matter since I started back in 2015. The only time that science ever lost the first place stadium or podium spot was in 2020. And there was a lot going on in the world during that time, as we know. So we think there was a lot of looking at the past and what was happening. And that's when science kind of took a minor backseat for just 1 year. And then it picked up and went right back at it. So if you have programs about science or fit that social studies topic, you can definitely find a way to get into those ones. Another thing to think about is our most popular programs are seasonal. So they fit with the changing of holidays, and they are also thematic to celebrations. So right now we're just finishing up Black History Month. We're going to be kicking off March with Women's History Month. Earth Day is a big time for celebrations. But you'll see that programs are often booked depending on that K-5 or the younger grades. They're looking at programs that are being talked about at that time. There is ways to kind of trick the system with this. As every content provider, when they join CILC, I give them the algorithm, or I tell them how to work it, because we all know that algorithms kind of control their lives on a day-to-day basis. We cannot go anywhere without an algorithm controlling us, to be honest. We at CILC provide you the algorithm order so you can get on top of one of them at least. But with that, we encourage you to think about even rewording or changing. There are times of the year certain things are looked at. And for instance, Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum has a program about slime. In the month of October, which is around Halloween, they call it Spooky Slime Time. It gets booked more, even though it still talks about properties of, of matter and all of that. It is booked a little bit more because it connects to that time of the year, and teachers use it as a fun, interactive way of teaching about that subject. So sometimes just thinking about how would you be trendy or catching into something helps get those programs a long way. Most programs are 45 to 60 minutes on CILC. They usually have an average of 30 to 60 participants. However, you as a content provider always set your low number of the minimum you will do a program for, and you will also be able to set your max. So you can say you take no more than 30 students for a program, and that is absolutely fine. And then you'll also see that the average price of a program is around 157 US dollars. Sorry, I did not calculate that over to Australian dollars. I'll let you all do that. That number has increased a little bit for the first time in a while, but the cost of doing business on a day-to-day basis has also increased. So we have seen an increase in programming with that. And like I said, that $157 is for the 45 to 60-minute program on average that is delivered to 30 to 60 participants. So if you think about that K-12 or classroom audience, it is usually for about 2 classrooms at a time. These are just a look at all of the programs that are booked for those particular subject matters. CILC, of course, is always looking at the various topics that are out there. And if for some reason your programs do not fit to a topic or subject matter that's out there, that doesn't mean that they can't find a place on CILC. It just means we're not tracking the data to particularly look at that program. So we are always adding particular programs for that. So for instance, we added religion a couple of years ago, was we had a couple of content providers that were doing programs that had some religious or had religious history connected to them. So we wanted to track that out there. These are some of the most popular programs. As you can see, the Underground Railroad Immersive Experience has a lot of bookings. It is tied directly to that Black History Month. Gingerbread Boy is booked a lot during the holiday season as a way to kind of connect to that seasonal time. Slime Time in the States of Matter, it also has a spooky one. But you'll continue to see these programs out there. A key thing to think about as you're looking at these, that as like I said, as you charge for a program, these programs do have a cost for them. Number 7 is one that is for free. It is federally based. A lot of the content providers on CILC that provide the program for free are required to by the US government because they're a government entity, or they have a substantial person that is helping them, or organization or partnership to provide those programming for free. But you'll see those there. So like I said, I'll give you data, access to all of that information. This is another chart to look at that, where 71% of the programs on CILC are booked that come a fee to it, and 29% are free. This number, like I said, hasn't changed very much since 2015 when I started at CILC. It has steadily been either between 25% to 30% that are free, back and forth, but overall our programs that are booked are with a fee. So when it comes to CILC content providers, CILC currently has 3 content providers from Australia. We are always want more content providers to expand where all the great places our members can go to. So we have the Australian Environment Education, which Karen leads, Physics Education with Ben. Of course, we have Reef Authority, to see the Great Barrier Reef. These are links directly to their content provider bios on CILC. And then you can see a list of their programming that they have. For the 3 of them, the average number of bookings over the last 2 years I just did was 38 programs for the year. So, you know, that could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less depending on them, but those that you can see is out there, some data. And then there's a link up here, like I said, for content provider membership on CILC, just to let you know how it works. So if you're to think about diving into this market, I just want to be upfront and show you what's out there. CILC has 4 content provider membership levels. These are the various costs of them. Of course, with every membership level increase, you get more opportunities, but they all have the same thing. You just get the, you know, a couple more pings of what you're going to get. They include marketing for our newsletter that goes out to 35,000 plus individuals every Sunday. That is our most direct way of getting to let our members know what we are up to as an organization and what all of you have to provide. So you can directly market in there. We also do social media marketing. We do direct mailings, and we can target certain areas or groups or people that book programs of a certain kind. If you said, I want to book or target a program to teachers in grades 5 to 8 who have booked a science program in the last 2 years, that can be done also. And CILC also does marketing to of our great content providers through conferences that we go to throughout the year. Physically, like Ben mentioned, me and him have met at ISTE, but we also do that through them virtually throughout the time. And then CILC provides with every content provider on our website a booking system for you to be able to negotiate back and forth when those programs are requested. It has a built-in time zone back and forth. So when you get a program sent to you, you look at it in your time zone and it goes back to the member and they look at it in their time zone. So you don't have to do any time zone conversion or think about daylight saving times or anything like that. That's out there. And then we also put in an evaluation system. So all of our programs, once they're delivered, an evaluation goes out, ask them for feedback. We as CILC look them over too to make sure there's no human error. For instance, every once in a while I get an evaluation that says strongly disagree at the top, and then at the bottom they'll say best program I've ever taken. A lot of times when I look back at the data, I can see it was done on a mobile device. I can see it was done at 5 a.m. in the morning, which a lot of times tells me that wonderful teacher probably was still in bed, probably didn't have their glasses on, and probably just got done looking at Facebook. So we have a chance to get in there. Also with evaluations, if you as a content provider have more information about that, we can discuss about what that means. Maybe do we need to connect to that member on your behalf? Do you want to connect to them? And then also, is there an instance where we may have to throw it out or edit it because of those circumstances? But we always make sure we're open to that. And then, of course, when we start off as a content provider, there is an orientation process where we walk you through everything. With every orientation, we cover your content provider bio, how to get that set up, your program creation. To get your programs on CILC, once you have the name of the program and the description, you need to know some basic standards or put your own regional standards. You don't have to know US standards or Canadian standards. You put them in. A good educator looks at those and can transfer them over. The format or the outline of what you're going to be talking about and the objectives are what those individuals are going to be walking away with learning. Lifelong learners, they don't care about those kind of things. Maybe the format so they know an outline of what's going to be covered. But with that in mind, if you create a program that is just targeted to lifelong learners, we won't be asking you all those details out there. And then of course, cover the marketing evaluations that we talk about a booking system. If you go to the CILC website, you see there's an activation fee of $300. CILC can waive that if you just mention you were part of the mini conference with us, and we'll be able to get that in mind. But that's something we cover. Also, as a content provider, I always have a question of, as soon as I do the orientation? Tammy, do I have to get all my programs up right away? And do you make me pay money ahead of time? And how fast do I need to get everything up there? I always tell people, take a deep breath. Don't worry. We don't charge or have you do anything until you're ready to go live. So if that means that you need to do the orientation and have someone else on your team join you and get those programs up and running, or you want to make sure that you're having everything over and life happens or an event is going on at your organization, you could take a month and it's okay. Once you're ready to go, you could take 2 months also or more. But once ready to go, you let me know. We take everything out of a special holding tank, go over it with you, make sure it looks good, and then we announce you to our amazing members at that time. And we always make sure to do that at a time where we get the most clicks. So if you were to tell us to do that around December 28th, I would say maybe it's not a good time to do it yet. We'll still have all your programs up there. We'll just announce you in the week after everyone would be back into a regular swing and a routine after the holiday. But we would make sure to always provide that for you. But with that in mind, that comes to the end of my presentation. I will drop this link and I'll also put my contact information in there too. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and see if there are any questions. I think we have time for questions at this time. You could throw them in the chat or however you like to go. I'll let Karen be in charge.
Excellent.
Or Ben.
Thank you so much for that, Tammy. It was really, really useful. And I just was inspired and thought maybe we need to do an Australia promotion for the Australian content providers. Say, come and join us, because it is really fun. Sometimes a little bit bleary-eyed, but just being able to talk to students from another part of the world, and sometimes just be there to do questions. I know Ben's done a lot of the early morning ones, and it is one of the challenges in terms of organizational decisions. Certainly when I was at a big organization, the ability for me to sleep over and do sessions there. But again, because it's so much easier with the software platforms that we're using, we can do things from home as opposed to having to be in the office. So yeah, it is definitely worthwhile chatting to Tammy and seeing how CILC can support your organization. So are there any questions that are popping up as well?
Not seeing any hands, but one thing is there's a big difference between the East Coast and the West Coast on time zones. And our next speaker 100% knows this because he's a presenter from Alaska coming into New South Wales. So you absolutely can do it, especially on the West Coast. East Coast, yeah, it's going to be a bit more difficult. However, when you go check out time and date conversion, our winter is terrible for their summer. But on the East Coast, it's really good in our summer. In fact, they're actually running a peak program. Everything's flipped, right? The other side of the world, the biggest, busiest time, and Tammy, you could yell at me if I get this wrong, for schools is February/March. And for a lot of us, we know full well as outreach providers, February's quiet, as is March. And if you think about huge number of schools that are over in the US, and the big gaps you've got in your calendars between February and March, and thinking about the West Coast, yeah, I know in the graph, a lot of the stuff's on the East with CILC with New York, but there's Canada, and they're booking right across the time zones. And that's like the biggest sector, right? You can be doing a lot of work into the West side, and you're only talking like it's, okay, right now it's 7:40 p.m., it's 2:40 p.m. where you are. All right, so you just move backwards. You just do a nine o'clock session, and suddenly it's still fitting within their time zone, or even an 8 a.m. Right? So it is possible. So there's a bit of an idea as you sort of think. Please, while we've got Tammy, have you got any questions for Tammy?
And you are correct, Ben, with times being the season for big bookings is that January, February for when programs are booked and delivered. We do see a little bit in December with that, but as I said, it's flipped around. So your summer, your quiet time, a lot of times, is a big busy time for us when it comes to it.
And I will say it's actually pretty easy to wade your way through the various versions of curriculum, because you can kind of you can look at like a like group, yeah, that does a similar thing to you, they're probably likely are linked up to the various curricula. So not just talking science, could be anything, right? And you can like copy the curriculum dot point, put it into your favorite search engine, and suddenly you can now go find all of the various ones and then copy and paste it across, right? So you can actually do it.
And another great opportunity is thinking about some collaborations. For Earth Science Week last year, we had the Royal Tyrrell Museum linking up with the Australian Age of Dinosaurs, and actually did a presentation on Australian dinosaurs versus, not fighting, but versus Northern Hemisphere dinosaurs, and what the differences and similarities of those fossils were. And it was an incredible program. So, have a think about whether there's an organization that might match up with what you do and actually have a Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere sort of combination. So there's some really, nice ways, if you've got set times that work for both of you in the time zones, to think about some of those opportunities to do something different.
And I also encourage content providers that if someone comes to you and it's just in a weird time zone or can't do it, always come back to the teacher. Sometimes it's just, you have a parent night where you want to connect your students. A lot of times the idea of going, it's Australia for us in North America. It's really cool to say you connected to it. And if you come back and say, do you have a parent night? Bring all the parents and kids to Australia and talk about it. There are some amazing teachers out there that have found a way to do a whole presentation with all their students around a topic and then connect to amazing content providers out there. So it is a really cool experience out there.
Oh, for sure. And I only just found out recently. So I'm going to speak your language, Tammy, for a moment. So Title I schools, this side, have 4 parent nights, family nights per year. And they straight up have to do it. It's like within their funding. So just little heads up, yeah. Anyway, so sort of that help you out with it a little bit. Thank you so much, Tammy, for coming and joining us. I know it's a bit of the evening as you look at your time zone.
Thanks so much.
I am happy to do that. Thank you for having me a part. I'll stick around. But if you need anything, like I said in the chat, and then I'll make sure to put all the links and everything in there too, and follow up, of course, with you and Karen.
Excellent. Thank you.
You, me.
Well, I'm going to say you, Ben, because I actually haven't ever met Darren, and I know that you have many times. So
yes.
Very happy to have you here, Darren, and I'll pass you over to Ben.
Thank you so much, Darren, for joining us. Now, this is a very good friend of mine. You're in the center. Awesome. I'm going to put you over here. So I'm just smiling because I had the sheer privilege to go to Seward in Alaska to visit Darren in person in the Alaska Sea Life Center. He is standing in a fantastic space. I know he's going to show all the things, so I'm going to not say much at this point. But Darren, it's really, really cool to hang out with you again. It's been a little while, and love your work, man. I'm going to flick it across. You'll hear it. It's worth your time to hear from Darren. All right, see you guys. Oh, your sound's not playing, even though it says it should be playing, which is us in distance learning land know it's always that fun.
Had to press the small red button.
There you go.
All right. So welcome everyone to the Alaska Sea Life Center. I hate to burst your bubble, Ben, but this is a green screen. It's dark here already. It's 6:45 p.m. Here in Alaska. So we have had to become more sensitive with our birds to lighting restrictions. And so I'm not standing out there, although it's dark. Anyway, we're close, but it just got dark a little bit ago. But as much as possible, we deliver our programs from out in the exhibit so we can show you animals like the birds that are flying behind me, or the spotted seals, for example. I am using OBS, Open Broadcaster software, if anybody's familiar with that, to deliver this program. And, oops, just make myself disappear. Sorry about that. I'm going to go back to the bird habitat because it's a little more exciting, but this is recorded video. There could be a fish that's just sort of obscenely close to the camera at some point. because of where we took this shot from. In a live program, if possible, we would be out in front of these exhibits and capitalize as much as we could on what the live animals were up to. But because they're live animals, we can only do so much. Ben, for a little throwback, I don't want to give you any nightmares or anything, but Tammy knows this about.
I remember that thing. There's a
This
photo
is still
of
very
you.
much in use.
Oh, wow.
In fact, that's what I would be using if I were out in the exhibits. I've kept it going, band-aided together where needed, but in the studio, I use a PC, and I prefer the old school equipment just because it's a little bit more reliable than a laptop that I'm dragging all over the place. We are mobile on that little cart, and so I'll haul it out in front of the various animals. So let me just give you a little rundown of what our program would look like here at the Alaska Sea Life Center. First, we would start with a little introduction to where we are. We'll talk about we are on the traditional lands of the Sugpiaq people here in our area of Alaska, right on the Pacific coast in what's called South Central Alaska. This is a photo of our town, not what it looks like today. Right now, it's basically pure white from here up, and the town is just sort of covered in a sheet of ice, which makes teaching my teenage son to drive quite the adventure. It's a little terrifying at times, but this is what it would look like in late July. And on the back sides of those mountains, there are glaciers, Alaska well known for that. So inside the Alaska Sea Life Center, we are a public aquarium. We are also a marine mammal rescue and rehabilitation facility. In addition to that, we are a research facility. And it's very rare to find a facility that has all of those components inside one building. Most organizations would sort of branch out. We like to keep it as complicated as possible. But from the public aquarium side of things, which Ben is familiar with, he came to visit us, we have over 3,000 animals. All are Alaskan species. We have 3 species of seals. We have the largest sea lions in the world, stellar sea lions. And we have diving seabirds that are very popular: puffins, guillemots, murres, auklets, and sea ducks. You get to come and watch these birds flying underwater. Most of our animals are fish and then invertebrates. The water comes straight out of Resurrection Bay right next door, so it is around about 5 to 7 degrees Celsius, pretty chilly. So we have a touch pool upstairs where we deliver one of our programs from, and putting your hands into that water is a bit shocking, I'll be honest, but if you dry off quickly, it tricks your brain into thinking it wasn't that cold. So education is a huge part of what we do. As I mentioned, we are also a wildlife rehabilitation facility. So we rescue injured and stranded marine mammals from all over the state of Alaska, which is roughly the same coastline as the entire rest of the United States. And we're the only facility that can respond to those animals here in Alaska. We also have that active research program. So we have a team of scientists working here with our animals. They work with wild animals. We have laboratory facilities on site. And that way we're able to build our set of knowledge about Alaska's marine ecosystems and work towards better protection and just taking care of those ecosystems as well as we can. We have a few folks who are even specially trained as scientific divers. But to dive here, in this temperature of water, we're going to be wearing roughly 45 kilograms of dive equipment, including, for me, I have one of the lightest weight belts on the whole team, and that is just under 10 kilos of lead weight. But some folks have over 20 kilograms of lead that they wear around their waist to overcome the dry suit, which is just filled with air to keep us sort of warm out there in that freezing cold water. Those of you down in Australia, it might look a little like New Zealand. It is a fairly similar climate and topography to your near neighbors there, the Kiwis. All right, so that's a little bit about where we are, and we, as long as we have time, we will spend a few minutes of every program talking about the setting here. And then I'll just list some of the various programs that we have. The one that I mentioned that is delivered from the tide pool is called Terrific Alaskan Tide Pool Travels. And we will set up a small camera and aim it straight into the pool. So, and this is one where we can guarantee that the live animals aren't really going anywhere. They're trapped inside an exhibit where I have ready access to them. And we'll talk about the different zones along the intertidal area. And as we identify various animals in the touch pool, we'll place them into those zones. So we've got some barnacles and mussels. We'll put our hand in and feel the urchins and watch their spines wrap around our fingers as we touch them. We will touch the anemones and show how soft and squishy they are and how their sticky tentacles will grab onto us. We'll touch a sea star. Not much will happen when we touch the sea stars, but we can show those animals and give students an idea of how these animals move. We'll talk about what they might eat and features of their bodies that allow them to live in these different zones. And the sea stars, we'll learn, can only get up to just about the top of the middle tide zone, which is why all the barnacles and mussels are safe up there in the high tide zone, even though they can only eat when they're underwater. So most of the day, they'll just be high and dry, waiting for that tide to return to them. So we'll talk about the daily lives of these creatures, like the octopus, the sea cucumber, and the hermit crab. So each of these animals, we do a little bit of an investigation into their adaptations, their features of their bodies, and then talk about how they fit into those different zones. That's terrific Alaskan tide pool travels. We also have programs based on the mammals and birds. So we talk a lot about seals and sea lions in marine mammal adaptations. We'll compare and contrast sea lions with the various species of seals that we have. So here we have some sea lions swimming through the water with those big long front flippers. And then we'll take a look at a seal swimming and notice they have really tiny little front flippers. Then we'll see how those animals move on land based on what we learned about how they swim. Compare that to how they move when they get out of the water. So here's a sea lion climbing up that steep cliff. Here is a harbor seal just barely making it up a gentle slope with those tiny flippers. They basically just squish their bellies along on the ground. A culminating event for that program for schools here in the US, where we can share materials by sending them via the mail, is we'll make these little clay seals. So we send out clay kits, and although we cannot ship physical materials all the way to Australia, who knows when or if they would arrive, we have had students there acquire their own plasticine, or whatever name you might call it down in Australia. And they provided their own, and we've made these little crafts with them. If not, though, we can always spend more time with Q&A. The kids are always fascinated to learn about the animals. So that's in lieu of that little craft project that our US kids would work on. Another part of that program, as I mentioned, the stellar sea lions are the largest species of sea lion in the world. This fat guy was the biggest one that we have had thus far. And in this video, he was, I can't do the kilograms conversion quite that fast, almost 1,200 kilograms. And this was Woody. He passed away back in 2015, but it is fun to share how enormous these animals are. You can see he's probably about 4 meters closer than those people standing there, but we're looking down from an angle, so it's a little hard to appreciate quite how huge he is. But he is the size of a small car in that video. And we talk about the food that they eat, how much they would eat, roughly 30 kilograms a day for a big guy like that. And then we'll compare them to the world's smallest marine mammal, the sea otter. The sea otter has no blubber, very much unlike other marine mammals, and extremely cute. But this thick coat of fur, when properly cared for, traps a layer of air around the outside of their body and allows them to float high and dry and stay warm in that cold water. But when we rescue a little sea otter pup like this one, we have to care for their fur, and that is a 24/7 operation. So we're not able to release these pups back out into the wild. If we rescue a little sea otter pup, we know it is bound for another zoo or aquarium, but no loss for the human population, because being close to these animals is a truly special experience. So that's marine mammal adaptations. Then for the birds, we have a very similar program where we compare how the birds move above and below the water. So here we have some diving alcids. The first one is a pigeon guillemot, and then right behind it is a tufted puffin. You'll see some bubbles coming out of their feathers. Those bubbles are air trapped in their down feathers, just like the sea otter. They use that to stay warm. And so you see these little trails of bubbles. You also notice that the birds are using their wings to fly through the water. So they have these very strong wings and powerful bodies, but they're quite dense. And as a result, it's a bit difficult for them to fly. So I like to have kids attempt to fly like an alcid. So you see that bird that's down by the water. I'll have the students flap along with that bird. You're welcome to there at home or in your hotel room. Try to flap along with it. And then I will show them what it looks like when it is not slowed down. So this is the real speed. It's pretty comical to watch kids try to flap their arms that fast. But of course they cannot. All right. Along the lines of examining animal adaptations, we have another program focused on cephalopods. And this one, very fun to do here in the US. If we can accomplish it, we will send frozen squid out to schools and dissect those squid online with the students live. But we can do that as a demo as well. If Australian schools wanted to do this program and focus on our octopus and squid and their relatives, we could do a dissection on our end, and if you could find your own squid locally, you could have the students dissect them in person or just watch and enjoy the show. So we talk all about various characteristics of octopus, including how they may care for their young and what their little babies look like when they first hatch out. These are just a day or two old little octopus paralarvae. Definitely not destined to survive, unfortunately, because their mom would have anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 eggs. And she'll do a fantastic job of caring for them, but once those eggs hatch, they drift around with the other plankton, and nearly all of them will get eaten somewhere along the way. As we move into an older crowd, we have a program focused on plate tectonics, and it's called Living in the Ring of Fire. So for that one, we will examine evidence found underneath the ocean that helps us understand this theory of the tectonic plates and their movements around the ocean. So we'll look at the mid-ocean ridges and the trenches and see how that helps scientists understand this theory of plate tectonics. The students would have a worksheet like this, plus this map, and they would be following along from home or from their classroom, looking at how those plates move around. Focusing on our science, this is a major crowd favorite. I think one of Tammy's favorites, honestly, the scoop on poop. And once again, unfortunately, we cannot ship the scat to Australia, but we could provide photos of scat samples, but for US schools and Canada, we send these scat samples out so that the students can pick through them and find things like these ear stones that tell us what species of fish the sea lion have been eating. We've got Alaska pollock, silver salmon. Somewhere in here, there's a tiny herring otolith or two. And that shows how scientists can use scat as a tool to understand the lives of these animals. We will occasionally find a rock or two in those samples. And I'll be quick to share that these sea lions, they are the largest sea lions in the world, and they will eat rocks. A small sea lion that we brought in for a temporary research program sent these rocks out to the floor of the tank from within its stomach. So we like to share a lot of these little tidbits that we learn about these animals through our scientific research. We also have a program called Sea Lion Monitoring, where we look at how we use remote cameras to watch those endangered stellar sea lions out there in the wild without disturbing them, at least not too much. Occasionally we have to do some camera maintenance. So the older students can get a really better feel for the science and how scientists are able to use different tools and technologies to help us learn more about those species out there in Alaska. That's kind of a quick overview of our programs, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'll look in the chat here that I haven't been able to see yet, in case there are any ongoing questions about the equipment that we use or how we connect.
No worries. I might actually, I might quickly add a question for you quickly straight away. I've been lucky enough to watch you present, which has been awesome. And just thinking, a lot of us here present in our distance learning rooms. We're tucked away in our boxes, and that's what we do, including me. You don't. You're out in the flesh, in amongst the public, right in the middle of it all, and there's tanks around you, and you're shooting different places. How do you manage public and then kids coming behind, literally coming on screen? Now they're beaming to New York. How do you deal with all that?
For starters, I have a different audio setup, so this is what I would use for live in person out there. And that allows me to cut out the background noise. I can move the one ear cap away from my ear so that I can hear those children when they're running up behind me, which is important to maintain some awareness of what's going on out there. But Joanne says I'm unflappable. Geez, that's a vocabulary word. It is one of my traits, I guess. I'm relatively tolerant of things going on around me, and it certainly helps because it can be quite chaotic. We can be really busy in the summertime, which is not normally our busy season for distance learning, but I have taught programs right out there in the middle of the exhibits with people all around me, and they will literally put their hands into my squid and touch it while I'm talking to the kids on the screen. I just do my best to find a quiet moment when I can mute my mic and answer a question or point out what I'm doing, and just be as positive as I can. But,
I've got to admit, Darren, I'm always a little bit nervous that someone might do something terribly inappropriate.
People are always nervous about even just walking past, but I always remind them that kids just think it's hilarious. You know, someone walks by with a trash can and they think it's great. It doesn't have to be anything weird, you know, and it's super fun because it's live. It's also takes a lot of the pressure off, you know. Standing here in this studio environment, I'm quite awkward compared to being out there in the exhibits. It's definitely my preferred environment. At this point, I have delivered about 2,300 video conference programs from here at the Alaska Sea Life Center, so I'm certainly fairly comfortable with the equipment and the content at this stage. When did we start virtual excursions? We started delivering programs back in 2005, and I took over the programs in 2007. Then had a little break for a few years when someone else took over them for a little while, and then back in 2009 probably I started doing them mostly full time. I still do other in-person programs, sleepovers and things. Just today I've been working on cutting out a life-size cutout of a moose for our little preschool program that happens every Monday here in person, which is very cute. But it turns out moose are gigantic, and it's been taking me all day to work on that. So I spread myself all around. I don't remember if Tammy mentioned, things have been sort of tapering off. We still do quite a few programs with Connected North folks, but we don't do nearly the volume of programs that we used to. We used to do upwards of 250 a year. Now it's probably going to be more like 150 per year. So we're busy here and there. And what Ben was talking about with the time zones, I'm occasionally subject to that myself. Next week, I'm coming in at 4 a.m. to deliver some programs to the East Coast of the US, but it's a high school, so they're not flexible on their times. So I'm going to be teaching from 4 to around 10 in the morning, doing squid dissections every 38 minutes or something. But Ben is no stranger to that. I remember him delivering programs at 2 and 3 in the morning from the studio. So still do. And actually, you scared me when you said the number of programs. I went, gosh, I don't want to count mine either. Yeah, it's funny. We put them all in one spreadsheet, and I just didn't really think about it until we hit 1,000, and then before you knew it, I had 2,000, and it's just still climbing. But I get a kick out of it. Obviously, I'm enjoying myself.
Oh, and it looks amazing. One day on my bucket list to come and visit. So do you think that that aquariums were some of the early adopters of using this technology? Because I know that one of the longest running programs here in Australia is Reef HQ up in Townsville, another aquarium. So I'm just wondering if it was just a good opportunity to get things underwater in aquariums out to everyone, or just coincidence?
Wow, I don't know. Actually, Tammy might have a better sense of that from the early content providers. We got our start 2005. We learned from some of the folks over in Ohio, where it had been pretty big. And I think the zoos in Ohio, sort of the middle of the US, had been pretty active with it. So I wonder if zoos and aquariums were some of the first, but I'm not really sure.
They are some of the very first, and
Sure.
any museum in Ohio is kind of at the leader forefront, and they continue to be just because they have a really good distance learning consortium within their state. They kind of lead that, but they
We actually
are
bought
the
our cart
forefront.
from somewhere in Ohio.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I mean, they must have been like the source of this.
It always comes from somewhere. Do we have any other questions?
Just curious, so are you seeing any shift as you reduce the sessions? Are you seeing a shift to more lifelong learners, to more homeschoolers, or is just a reduction, or like just wondering if there's a lift in the shift?
I would say it's just a reduction overall. We still do a few lifelong learners. We haven't really done a lot of homeschool, except through the streaming platforms where there's like streamable learning. CILC does some of those, and I think they're free usually, or maybe a subscription-based thing. So we get a lot of homeschoolers that way. But because our programs are paid, it's unlikely that homeschool groups would get together to pay for it. But we have had a few where a homeschool organization would sign up, and then we've had a handful. I guess they're not homeschooled, but with Joe through EcoLink. There's some kids that have dialed in remotely from various schools. But I would say, yeah, just kind of overall, it's been Connected North really had a giant bubble. So they were a boom, still classroom-based programs, and kind of across grade levels. So they just sort of replaced some of the other US schools that were tapering off there. We used to have a lot of just really repetitive repeat customers year after year. You know, someone built it into the curriculum, and we still have a handful of those that are kind of our bread and butter. But I think slowly but surely over the period of the pandemic, you know, a few of those disappeared, and some of them are losing funding, of course, as time goes on. It's hard to pick up new customers, but when we do, it's usually someone who was a little skeptical, and somebody convinced them to try it, and then afterwards they're like, wait, this was amazing. We should do this again, you know, more often. They may not have the funding for it, but they are out there. So if one thing has changed, I would say we've got more sort of one-off programs to new groups that we've never connected to before. Those have picked up a little here and there as the old mainstays have died off a bit.
Have you done collaborations with sort of other aquariums across the US or Australia?
Great question. A little bit, not. We have worked a little with Reef HQ, where we had a middle school ocean sciences club here, and we booked their programs, or we've done a few in kind of the distant past now. Working with Tammy, we did some in-person teacher workshops where we were training some teachers here in Alaska on how to use distance learning, and so we booked a few programs from other providers that way. We've definitely talked about doing some kind of a combination program with other groups, but I can't think of any where it's really come to fruition. There's always just some kind of logistics and marketing hurdles, but we do constantly collaborate with other organizations, just not necessarily from a distance learning perspective. Aside from just sharing what we know through the CILC, we're part of the bigger team of content providers, and so we'll have little side conversations with the other science organizations that do similar things, and we'll share information that way. But as far as like setting up programs together, we haven't really done that.
I've always wondered about whether considering, I mean, we know people around the world doing this sort of thing, then maybe one day we just go to the UN and be done with it and create some sort of thing that just goes around.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
We actually, and I failed to mention, we did a couple of Ben's programs as well. Those were huge hits with the Ocean Sciences Club.
A while ago,
Always
yeah.
just default to the liquid nitrogen because kids love to watch things blow up. But it was a blast.
Funnily enough, that's what I'm
I
doing over
remember
in
what
California
time.
right
It was
now.
probably a decent time for you because it was an evening club, so it probably wasn't too bad for Australia.
Oh, I love Alaska. And again, I mean, this is really sort of pumping Tammy's tires a little bit. Seriously, Alaska is like the best time zone you can possibly think of.
Yeah. Because there's, of course, Hawaii is even better, but I'm not sure what kind of content there is coming out of Hawaii. They tend to be a lot more, so they're going to serve their own population right there in Hawaii.
Bit like Texas.
Yeah, a little bit. We actually used to have a lot of programs in Texas, but that's
Ecolink's Ecolink's been playing around with a lot of combo things now. For example, Liberty Science Centre run a good climate change program which we do with them probably once a term or whatever in our offerings. But we're pulling in an Australian ice core scientist that works in the Antarctic to do the second hour. So so with her, I'll be designing a workshop video conference hour that will follow the link to Liberty Science Centre. And we're finding that, those ones have been quite successful if they're carefully planned. And we usually have a 15-minute break in the middle where the kids can go to the loo or whatever, and then flow on to the actual hands-on workshop where we send out the STEM in a box kit and apply what they've learned in that first section.
Nice. We were, way back when, Gordon Booth over in Alberta, Canada, brought us into a program they were working on across rural Canadian areas, and kids were joining from all over the place, but it was called Species at Risk. So they found scientists all over Canada and the US who worked with endangered species or species at risk, and then you would present some information from the scientist, and then about 2 weeks later, you would connect again, and you would have given the kids an assignment, and they would present it back to you. That was a really fun, great way to connect. It certainly took a lot more work, but I think it was pretty rewarding for our scientist. She got a kick out of putting that presentation together, and then we all had a blast watching the kids.
Sure. And
to us. They were
so important, that sort of longevity of learning pathways and programs, and not always easy when you're doing the 1 hour razzle dazzle.
Yeah, definitely not. We've only had a few programs like that. For us, it's much more you see them once and that's it. They come here in person or via distance. Either way, they're coming for this special experience, but then that's about all you get to see. We did have a much longer term program here at the Alaska Sea Life Center. It was heavily grant funded initially, and then it was so successful, we were able to get some corporate sponsorships. It was called the Sea Journey. So we worked with a school district up in Anchorage, which is roughly 3 hours away by road. And we built this program where initially they did a virtual connection to us just to learn about the animals that they would be seeing. Then they actually came down and did a visit in person. And then we visited their school. I apologize. The automatic light system doesn't think that I'm moving enough. Give me a moment here. There we go. Challenges of the studio setup here. And then we would go visit their school to see, they would come up with a project that they would show off to us at the end of the school year. So it was a neat way to have that continuous connection with the kids. And we would even do extra little virtual connections throughout the school year just to show them something fun. It was very rewarding, a huge amount of work, but by far the best program that I have been a part of here, and I've been here for 21 years now. That was definitely the most successful, but it can be a major challenge to put all the pieces in place for a program that big. And unfortunately, COVID kind of squashed that. It hasn't really rebuilt since then.
How many kids did you have involved in that, Darren?
Give me a moment. roughly, no, I can tell you. I think it was over 1,000 students. Yeah, we had roughly 45 classrooms. So close to 1,000 because they were kind of 20 to 25 kids per classroom, but it varied quite a bit. But close to 1,000 kids each year. And it went on for, I want to say 5 years running. Yeah, very successful program, and we were continuing to sort of modify it as we went along, make small adjustments. But after the first couple of years, we really settled into a really nice setup that was very successful.
Sounds like a great program.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you, Darren, very much for joining us and sharing the amazing programs that you've been running there. I think I've certainly got very inspired and thinking how we can maybe get you involved in C Week next year.
Yeah, sure.
So thank you so much. We've now got Bonnie from Dart Learning joining us now. Thanks so much. And if there's any links, please email them to me, Darren. I can share it with the group with links back to the website and things like that as well.
All right, will do.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Darren. That's great to see. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. So Bonnie from Dart Learning has been, again, essentially supporting most of us through our virtual excursions journey. Has been very, very important in certainly getting me started at the very beginning. So I appreciate all of your help and support, and look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, now I'm just going to make sure I'm sharing the right screen. How are we going? Seeing that okay?
Yep. Dart Learning, bring the world to your classroom.
I've had a bit of a, yep, beautiful. Gee, we've had lots thrown at us today already, but it's always so good to come to these mini conferences and reconnect with everyone, see all the familiar faces, but also just to see the work, which I just find I'm not seeing as much of these days because we don't have the Tambergs, Darren, anymore. So yeah, we don't get to see them and watch as often. So I do miss it. Just a little bit about Dart Learning to bring you up to speed. We were moved from the rural and distance education unit a couple of years ago. We now sit with what's called the Digital Education Solutions part of the department. So lucky enough, that means we have a few more resources. So as well as myself and Jacob Nankiville, we now have Leanne Stone, which a lot of you may have met. She's on board full time and does a lot of our administrative work and a lot of help for our providers. We have Emily Norman, who's been working with us on making us look fantastic with all of our digital marketing and all of our presentations. So you'll get to see some of her work today. We have Jan Rasborzik working with us on a part-time basis. You may remember her from Kamei Bay Environmental Education Centre. She was part of the department for a long time and has been a provider with Dart for a long time as well. And we still are working with Adventure Digital, who help with our website and a lot of work for us behind the scenes as well. And we also, with the new group that we are in, we have access to a lot of teachers who are developing online resources in what's called the Student Learning Library. So the New South Wales Department of Education have these resources available to teachers. We're helping getting a lot of exposure to those things. So when you talk about that growth that's in that K-2 area, all of those, in those younger years, all of that area, those resources are catered to. So what we often say is as long as something has a video component to it, some kind of introduction, some kind of a YouTube clip, then we can actually put it on Dart Learning as a video resource. Because as we've been learning today, those time differences are such a factor, and trying to fit in with a busy teachers is always difficult. So one of the focuses for the department at the moment since the change of government has been the workload reduction, because we have such a shortage of teachers, such a shortage, especially in those rural and remote areas, that having things packaged so that it targets exactly what they're doing, so they can incorporate some resources, they can have another voice in the classroom, they can make work engaging for the students. As content providers, that's really a great thing for you to provide to the teachers, and that's what teachers are looking for. So we say our job at Dart Learning is to make it easy for teachers to find you and to give them an expert in their classroom, so that all of the onus isn't always on them. They get your voice, they get your experience, they get your facility, and they also have those resources sitting there as an extra thing for them to share and tick off everything they have to in curriculum. The other things that make sure things appealing to teachers is they talk about their entertainment factor, or the edutainment, if you like. It does have to be curriculum based, but it has to be engaging for kids, and that is what you guys are good at. The fact that you can present something that is engaging for kids, older or younger, that K to 12. We are, of course, only K to 12. We do development for careers for students, but our focus being part of the New South Wales Department of Education means that it's K to 12 for us. So I will move along and just run over initially some of the, I don't think this works. Yep, figures from 2023 and see how we went. So I just want to run through those first and then talk about 2024 and show you some of the new things that we've introduced to help you find the right audience. So you can see, obviously, there's our anomaly of 2021. What a year. 2022 was still a fantastic year and 3 times what we were doing prior to COVID happening. We still experienced fantastic growth last year. Fantastic new providers and fantastic people still taking up our resources. We think a lot of that comes from the fact we have so much support within the department now. We're working with comms and engagement. We get our stuff on the announcement and on the intranet all the time. There's a lot of extra things that we're doing that is getting a lot more exposure to the work that's being done, which is, of course, your work, but that's what we're helping promote into and for our teachers. So these are the figures from last year. We had a 400% increase on 2019 because we don't like to compare ourselves to the blip that was COVID. We had a total of 14,197 bookings. Total excursions 4,251, with 174 content providers now on our system. I will talk about those things a bit more and how we're getting those figures and what we're doing about having content providers and what's available as well. Our website views and this social reach of over 1 million. Now, this social reach only actually is for our external socials. So our Facebook, our LinkedIn, our Instagram, and those things. It doesn't actually include things that we do internally because we can't get that data, but we promote things across Yammer, we promote things across the statewide staff rooms, which is where teachers see everything. We have newsletters, we have our announcements that go on the internet. So there's a lot of those things that happen internally, and as I mentioned, the comms and engagement things as well, that we don't actually gather into that figure. So it's really quite impressive, I think, that we've got that reach. Our remote students, we are about 22%, which is also fantastic. And we have 88,000 registered users. These are our top 5 excursions from 2023. Okay, and then what I did next was just break down, with the help of Emily, I'll say here, she's made it look beautiful, was actually look at the breakdown of various events we did last year. Some of the ones that you mentioned, Karen, SciFest, ClickFest. I don't have C Week in here, and I think another one, but I thought it would be good for you to get a comparison. Book Week is obviously one of our biggest weeks. We do work on weeks, and hopefully you've all seen that school calendar, which we are relying on more and more. It is based around the education system. It is based around inclusivity. So there's a lot of things in there that it's worthwhile relatively tagging your events with, so that they keep getting exposure to things. So as you know, we get you to list things, whether they're live events, whether they're by request, so they can request a one-to-one to you, or whether they're on demand, which allows the teacher to watch whenever they can. But if those events are tagged, what it means is when Book Week comes up again, if your event was tagged with Book Week, your event gets exposure again. When we go ahead and do 12 different posts across our socials, our external socials, and then also our internal stuff, your event is getting more exposure every time that happens. So, yep, Book Week was our big one, followed by SciFest, which was also fabulous and large. Virtual Week in Canberra, nowhere near the numbers it was when everyone was at home, but the feedback we get about it, the students and teachers that are involved in it, it is a really worthwhile event that we're going to continue to do. We might do it differently, but we're still hitting a market that really needs those virtual excursions, so that's fantastic as well. And there's our numbers for ClickVest, which might vary from the ones that you have, Karen, your figures, because I think collecting what you guys do and what we do, as you know, we make sure that our system is very agile, and you can go ahead and you can use our booking system, or you can use your own booking system. If you use your own booking system, all we can do is create what we refer to as a guesstimate, which means if a teacher clicks on the book button and goes out to your site, we count that as 30 students. Now, we could count that as 250, or we could count it as 1. So we often ask them to say, are you a homeschool or are you a different school? And then if they're a homeschool, we only count it as 1. If they're an actual school, then we do count it as 30. But as I said, that's just a guesstimate that we can do. There's no other way for us to actually gather close figures with that. And we need to do that because otherwise we can't give you the ability to use your own booking system, not just ours. Okay. Here's a bit of feedback that we received as well from 2023. As you can see, lots of positive stuff, lots of things that mean that it's actually engaging for students, and they're the sort of things that everybody wants to know, that what we're doing, the work we're doing matters, and it is making a difference to all of those students that can't get to the events. And some of them, I mean, whether it's lower socioeconomic, whether it's remote, whatever the reason is, whether it's a disability, all of these things make a difference. Or whether it's just easier, it's easier for a teacher to give them an enriched education by attending things virtually. Okay, looking at our service improvements that we're actually going to be doing for our providers this year. We've made additions to the provider dashboard. So I'm just going to give you a quick squiz at this one. So at the moment, when you go in, and I've used you here, Karen, mostly you can go into your provider analytics, or from the dashboard, you can actually go into the provider analytics. And what this is going to give you is something similar you're seeing here on the left. So you'll get the Dart Learning Summary. The top bit here is going to be appearing on everybody's analytics, and then it goes down and does yours individually. So I've logged in here as Virtual Excursions Australia. This data is only relevant from the 1st of January 2024 through to whatever the current date is that you go in and have a look at it. So you can see here that the excursions and profile page views have had 479. There have been 671 students who have registered, and there's been 47 bookings. It also shows you here how many current, right at this very moment, excursions you have available, what's live, what's by request, and what's on demand. And then the breakdown here shows you who's a New South Wales Department of Education school, what is an other school, whether it's it might be lifelong learners, it might be parents, it might be private schools. It's just anyone who's not a Department of Education school. And then we've segregated out the homeschool section as well, so you can see what percentage is homeschool. And then over here, we've done a breakdown to let you see, because we talk about that equity and we talk about that outreach, this shows you the location breakdown. So in other words, anyone who is regional, rural, or remote is factored out here as well. So you can see that that's a breakdown of 17%. What you're then going to get is the page views on your site, and you can see where there's peaks and troughs right up to the current date. So every time you log into your analytics, you are going to be able to see how much traffic have I been having on my pages and my profile view. Then underneath that, you will have the year-to-date excursion views for, yet again, from the 1st of January to the current date, and the year-to-date bookings from the 1st of January to the current date. So it will show you, this isn't your data, this is actually my data in this instance. Karen didn't want to give too much away for everyone because it's not mine to share, but you can see of what's actually had page views and what actually has had students register and how many have actually registered. Now, the other thing that's interesting with this is you can see, as I mentioned, with the tagging of things, because we've just had, I think it was Harmony Week, there's some things that keep coming up because they're tagged with those things. Therefore, that's why they're getting views. So we haven't actually produced any of these particular events. I had a look earlier. They're not new. They're just getting more exposure all the time, which is what you want. The work that you've done, just because you did it last year doesn't mean it's still not something that teachers are going to want. So that's really important as well. So that's our dashboard and analytics that we've added. The next thing is the presentation that we've put together. Now, this is for teachers, content providers, and principals. I like to call this my pyramid selling, because what happens is we get asked to present at things. People want to know, what are you guys doing? What's coming up? So on our actual presentation, what this will show for anyone who wants to present it is it'll give you a rundown on each term. So we update this at the end of every term. So you can here's term 1 for 2024. Don't actually think it's spot on, but it's just an example for you. If I go and have a look at last year's, so here's our report card for term 3, showing you how many students we had, what our highlights were, how many remote students we reached, and the total excursions that we had available. And then we do a little bit more of a breakdown to talk about particular figures and show some events and anything else we might have. Sometimes it can be feedback, and other things we also show is, of course, the events to watch. So a lot of the time our principals and teachers are showing this to, so a principal might show their school to say, okay, these are events that are coming up, so that a teacher can prepare and get ready for upcoming things. Now that brings me to the next thing that we have available in each of the principal presentation, and this is the school calendar. So Emily May has put this together. It's beautiful. It's taken a lot of work, but it's great for teachers to be able to see, okay, Children's Mental Health Week, Library Lovers Day. They can plan their week as long as your things are tagged with these or you're fitted into what these are. Your events will get exposure as well. So this is also downloadable, printable, and available on this presentation for people to share. Okay, so that's our presentation that we have available. The next thing we've finished is the provider pack, which assists with engaging our new content providers. So often you might be talking to someone and think, oh, who's Start Learning? What do they do? Don't know, we've got a brochure. So we also have an onboarding system that we do. So this explains to them who Dart is, what we do, why they should join, and how to become a provider. On this particular one here, it's just we've tried to be as concise as we can. Once someone goes, oh, yep, I want to know more, they go into the how to become, and they can basically fill in an online form and start the process of, let's have a chat to them, let's have a look at their resources, let's talk to them about how they can become a provider with Dart Learning. So that's another thing that you can show all your friends who work in whatever industry, or whether they're science, whether they're a museum, whether they're an individual place, whatever. As you know, we are a free service. We are a free service to our content providers, and we are a free service to our teachers, homeschools, other schools. That's the beauty of us being a government organisation, and we are supported in that manner. That doesn't mean we expect your events to be free, and we understand that they can't be. We just are not involved with any money that way. Basically, we help you find the audience, and then you discuss with the schools the arrangements, the financial arrangements, if there are any. Okay, so that's our provider pack. And then the other thing we've created is what we're referring to as our resources page. So everything I've just detailed here is going to be on this resources page. So if you want to find anything that's relative, that you're looking for the provider pack, you're looking for the presentation, you want to know what's happening with the school calendar, we often put together something that might be at the end of term that might be for emailing out. So you can use that to email out to your people, say, hey, this is what's available on Dart Learning at the moment. So we're going to give you the link to the resources page and make sure that you've got things there that you can use. That's all the things that we've created. They're all the new services that we're hoping that you will grab. And then there's a few other things that we've also been looking at. And one of them is the fact that hopefully most of you know about it, but is the free promotions that we give. So we have a digital marketing plan. You actually have the ability to go in, and most of you do this, or a lot of you do. I know, Ben, you're wonderful at doing this. So please take a leaflet out of his book, where you request a social media post on a particular day. We do suggest at least 2 to 3 weeks before your event is due to happen, pop it in the calendar so that we can make sure that we're getting an audience for you for that particular event. You can request to appear on the homepage banner. You can send us a short little video promotion, and we can put that into our digital marketing plan as well. So there's lots of ways for you to actually ensure that you have agency in helping us help you. The other thing that's really important is when things do appear on Dart Learning is that liking and sharing. I know that Tammy was talking about the good old what's it called? I've forgotten the name for it. Algorithm. The good old algorithm that follows us around everywhere. So if you want to help us help you, liking and sharing anything that we have on our socials is going to help that for sure. So can I please ask that you get involved in doing that. So one, request social media for yourself, and then also promote anything or help share stuff that's already on the Dart Learning stuff. Next thing is keeping current listings and events. So sometimes we find a provider will list something and then we won't hear from them for years. Now, as I said, we're a service for teachers, our big focus being in that workload reduction for them. So we are currently auditing our website, making sure that the events that we have are still current, are tagged appropriately. If providers don't have anything listed, finding things that they probably could list on the website so our teachers can find them. Most of the things that obviously we find them publicly, it's just a matter of having them on the website so teachers can go, I'm looking for book week stuff for my year 4 kids. Bang. They don't have to go and look at Australia Post. They don't have to go and look at individual authors. They don't have to go and look at museums. They find it on the one website that's just pertinent to their needs. So that's one thing. The other thing is we often ask our new providers to make sure they have something listed within the first 6 months so that we can complete that onboarding process. We ask our providers to list one event, at least one event a year, and that's fine as long as you kind of, it doesn't have to be something fresh, it just has to be made sure that it's up to date and not expired. So there is usually about a 5-year expiry on the events that sit on our website, because as we know with technology, when we look and laugh at the Tamberg, things move along pretty quickly. So that's the other thing that we're looking at there with our service improvements. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about was you guys and what do you need? So we try and communicate with you and let you know what's happening. We send newsletters. We have a Facebook support group for our content providers. We're looking at things like, does our website need pop-ups to remind you of things? We understand that everyone's really busy. So it's really important, as much as we're talking about workload reduction for our teachers, it's the same for our providers. We don't want to give you more work to do. We want to give you solutions and make sure that the work and you getting your message out there is as easy as it can be. So when we have new tags for our website, we need to let you know about those. We also would love to know things like feedback that you get. What are your student numbers? What's your bookings? Any improvements, changes or suggestions you might have that can make it a little bit easier. Sometimes it's quite easy for us to change how the website looks, and we've done this a number of times from feedback we've received from you. We've set the website up so you can do collaborations with other organisations, whether they're lots of different dinosaur places, whether they're for Earth Science Week, whatever they happen to be for. We've set the website up so you can do that. And same thing, that's come from feedback from you. So one of the things I'd really like to find out today is, how can we communicate with you? What are you looking for in that communication? And are there any other suggestions that you have for us that would make life a bit easier? That's all I had. I'm open to hear.
Thanks.
Well, firstly,
so much.
thank you. You go, Karen.
Bonnie, it is always fabulous to hear what's been going and to see that increase, even though we did have the COVID blip, but it is still going really strong. So I think that is really great news, and the fact that we're getting a broader market base with the early learners coming through, and again, as a lot of us have seen, the increase in the homeschool audience as well. And I think, individually we might not all be seeing that an increase in bookings, because there is so much more on-demand content, and there is so many more content providers as well. So the choice that teachers have is absolutely huge. So I think, getting involved in those events, I love the fact that there were so many for ClickFest, because Virtual Excursions Australia didn't actually deliver a live session for ClickFest last year. I'll take that all on board. It was because I was moving house and I just could not work out how to do both. But there was lots of things, including our ClickFest from 2022, that was an on-demand resource. So I think
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and sorry to interrupt you, Karen. One of the things I was going to say there is, it's like when we have a focus. So this year, it's the year of the Olympics. So we are going to be doing lots of pushing for things around the Olympics. If you've got something that you think, I could do something new and different, a little bit fresh, that's going to give leverage to my other things, get my name out there, because there's that people, are going to be looking for it. Teachers are going to be looking for it. The other thing I wanted to offer was, as I mentioned, our team's a bit bigger now. So we've got extra support, especially for your on-demand resources. And I know you've probably heard from Leanne, or you've heard from Jan. They may have reached out to say, hey, we found this particular, resource you've got sitting there on YouTube. Why don't we list it as an event, making it easy for our teachers to find? So if you have something that you would like some help with that, please reach out to us, because we would rather see it there available for our teachers than for them to try and find it without, as I said, they don't have the time to sort of go and do that a lot of the time. So we can help find those on-demand things and put them on the website, whether they're professional development, whether they're a 5-minute video, whatever they happen to be that a teacher might find interesting. At least we're giving them the choice then of if it's right for them or not right for them.
Yeah.
One other thing, Karen, sorry, while I'm still blurbing away here, is when we talk about those resources that we've got built by teachers for things. So for instance, phonetical things like sound, sometimes those videos are only short. Sometimes we could do a collaboration with our providers and say, hey, we're doing this a particular thing around bees. Who's got something bees? We could talk about the bees. We introduce the bee sound, and we link those things in with our providers like yourself, so that the resource that's sitting there can link into something interesting, because as I mentioned, you're the experts presenting, but we can still link it into curriculum. So if you've got any ideas around that, reach out as well.
Excellent. Naomi, you've got a question as well for Bonnie.
Yeah, I've been noticing all the rise of the on-demand stuff, and I'm just wondering if we've got some stuff we want to list, and we're currently actually listing it on the Dart, which we've never really done before. We've only done our actual facilitated events. Are people listing it like they've got their video and so they put it on and they do book now, and people book now, and the teachers get an automatic email that says, now go to the website, that way it goes onto the spreadsheet and we get that data? Is that how people are listing their on-demands?
Absolutely. It's your choice totally, Naomi. Lovely to see you. Hello. So your choice is you can have it as book now, and you click it and you gather that information and you email them. So in the same way you set up a live one with the Zoom link, you just put the YouTube link in and they get sent that YouTube link, and you might have other hyperlinks to other information based around that they get in one nice concise email. Our website is set up so that when they go to the website, sometimes we found they do this, they lose the email, but if they go back to your listing and they have already registered, because it's with the website, the Dart Learning website booking system, the joining the event page changes so it is reflective of the email that they were sent. So even if they lose the email, it's going to be on that website. If they use your booking system, or if you don't care about gathering that data, you just want to get it out there, then you still have book now, and it can jump straight to the YouTube video, or it can jump straight to a landing page on your website. And that's where I'm talking about. We do the guesstimate of, okay, they hit book, or they it says, you can actually change the text there to not say book now. It can say click for more information, click here to see this resource, whatever. You can make it say things. If they hit that red button or they hit a hyperlink, then we count that. We ask them, are you a homeschool? Are you a DE school? Where are you? They answer it, and then that pops into our guesstimate of who's actually booked that for you, without gathering any information like what's the teacher's name, how many students they have, where are they based, all that. We can't gather that information. But we can still see that they've done it.
We kind of love the information gathering, because we actually had a problem where we sort of lost data at work, and we went back to you and you had like our last 7 years worth of virtual like data in the spreadsheets. We re-exported them all and gave them to the marketing team. It's like, that's amazing.
But that's so because if you have used it, that's exactly right. You do still retain all that information, and you can export that booking information because it belongs to you. A teacher has to obviously opt in to say they want to join your lists, but you, as in if you're going to start marketing to them, then you have to filter on the yes, no.
Yeah,
but
we've
you
done
still
that,
get all that information anytime. On your little dashboard there, it says booking report.
What I tend to do for Australian environmental education is have a page on the website and have the additional resources, any downloadable teacher's notes that I want to link to it, and have the YouTube clip embedded into it. That's really handy if you've got control over your own website. Not so handy if there's a separate web team, that it's very hard to get things through. But it means that I'm getting the analytics through to the page views on the website, and then I'm getting the analytics through the YouTube channel of when that video is being watched as well. So it means that I've got all of the resources that would support that video available for teachers in one spot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, available for teachers, and also available for the powers that be in your organisation, or whether you're going for a grant. You can say, look, hopefully that's how we've set the analytics page up. It's a quick screen grab for you to be able to grab that and throw it into something and do a presentation on it. I've just seen that there's in the chat that Blanche has asked a question in regards to live or on demand. So in regards to that, high schools are really difficult to get. So on demand stuff is fantastic. We find that the on demand is really, really great. To be honest, it's been really popular with our primary schools as well, because teachers have certain things on certain days and they don't want to miss out. So on the overview of our listings, on the first page, we have a quick overview. So there's 3 tabs: overview, details, and join the event. And on the overview, it says, is this going to be recorded? As a provider, we suggest, even if you've got a recorded event coming up and it's only available, we used to have this as what we refer to as on demand for a limited time, but now we just call everything on demand, and you pretty much can put in a date range that is going to be available. So if it is on demand, we still say, why don't you make it live for the date it's going to be available? And once that first date has passed, then you convert it to an on-demand event. So they know, okay, it's not available to that date, and then it's going to be live. So we have it as a live event, and then it converts to on-demand. And so then you're kind of hitting those that are ready to watch it with the on-demand available later. It's basically the same link that they get sent, but it helps get that exposure because we list things as live. We can schedule things in because it might be pertinent to a particular thing, like the Paris Olympics, it might be pertinent to that. So we have it available for that, but it's still going to sit there as on demand later. And I think Tammy made reference to naming things a certain way. It can still be the same thing. You might rename it so that it gets a little bit more exposure. That's just a clever way to do things.
Absolutely. And Leanne's just also mentioned that if you're using the Dart booking system, you can add extra questions to collect targeted data as well. So yeah,
she's got lots of good ideas for you.
We tend to use the Dart booking system for all of the virtual Excursions Australia events because they're all free. So I don't have to worry about putting in an extra sort of payment link in there. And what it means is I'll just put the Zoom registration in the once they've booked, they get sent that, so it's automated, so I don't have to do it. They don't have to register because they've already done that through the Dart booking system, and it means I get a lot of data from that as well. And what I tend to do is a lot of the promotion is say register to see the event live or to get the recording. So it means teachers know that if they can't make it, because they've registered, because I've got that email, they'll get the recording and any supplement material that goes with it. So that's one of the ways that you can kind of get your numbers up with teachers that are going, oh, I actually can't go. And depending on your organisational needs as well, you can just do it for that limited time. That link will be public on YouTube for a week, and then it might get turned off. So there's a few different ways to do that depending on how you want to use your recording collateral. Excellent.
Thanks, Karen and Ben, for giving me the opportunity to speak. I always really appreciate it. It's nice to see everyone.
It's always a great way to start the year with finding out, what happened in 2023 and what we're looking forward to for 2024. So it's really fabulous to have both you and Tammy here today to share your vast amount of expertise, and it's always inspiring to have a case study and showcase like Darren from Alaska Sea Life Centre talking about their programs. And yeah, hands up who wants to go to Alaska now. I think most of us here. So thanks very much, Bonnie. Are there any final questions that we've got coming up at the moment? Anyone want to share things that they are going to be doing in 2024? Otherwise, Ben, I will get you to talk a little bit about your learning from home that you were doing in February and March this year.
I can do that, what people think.
Yeah.
Just quickly also, Bonnie, thank you. The advent of Dart over the last decade has been extraordinary. And I just like how it's just a constant iteration. So it's not a standstill thing. It's fantastic. Thank you. Awesome.
Thanks, Ben.
It is. It's fantastic. It's really, really cool. I don't want to talk over anyone in case, so just raise your hand or just blurt over the top of me. It's quite okay. Okay, well, I'll jump into what Karen just talked about. Science at Home. We're in our 3rd year. Yes, I think it is. We're in the 3rd year of Science at Home. So I might just quickly, I'll just dump a link into the chat. Recording people, that doesn't help you very much. So I suppose I can quickly, because I didn't really prepare anything. So if I just go, get the thing up and then do share the screen because we can do that thing and we're all good to go. All right, so share screen. Do I have the power? Yes, I have the power. Great. Okay, Science at Home is simply a page that's sort of buried on our website. And it was really a response at the time thinking, what can we do during COVID? This was an opportunity to engage kids of various persuasions of age and wherever they are in the world, wherever they are, they don't have to be in a formal learning space. They can still hang out with us. It's done via Zoom webinar. We're currently in the March sessions now. We are running the primary sessions at 2 p.m. Every day. So Monday through Thursday is formal lessons. So for 40 minutes, because we're dealing through K through 6 for this particular age group. And on the Fridays, we do a Kahoot session, which is just as popular. Also a high school program. It has the usual marketing blurb as you might expect. But the format it's webinar based. So firstly, we find that a lot of the homeschoolers are either highly savvy with doing this because for many years, or they need to be walked through what to do. So expect both areas of they've never done it before through to they straight up know what they're going to do. We have this problem a lot on registrations. Why is no italics? Zoom, I mean, you probably listening here thinking the same thing. It would be wonderful if you're happy to talk to a particular Zoom representative or any other platform that they could actually add a secondary check on their email as before they register, because we've had a lot of people registering with their wrongly spelled email, and then it's blaming us because they can't get their link. So just be aware that we've actually put like this, like literally in the information, make sure that you check your spam folder. We've even put it as an additional question. Please, secondarily, check your email, because when they tell us that the participant, we often find in their second email, in the second question we've asked them their email again to confirm that it was incorrectly done. So it's a little hack to know, not just about homeschooling, but just Zoom webinar in general. So yes, we actually record those sessions. We're dumping them into a Vimeo showcase, and that's just got a password on the top of it. And so they have access for a certain amount of time after the fact. Inevitably, when you're running sequential sessions every day at a particular time, something's going to clash with their lives. So we do that. Then it just comes down to, I mean, this is a real quick shoved on our site situation, but so it's, we'll just have a themed week. It'll have a very clear list of what they've got to bring along to the thing, usually simple stuff. And the curriculum links, because otherwise we're not helping them with their linking. A little heads up, if you are running multiple months, these pages can get really long. So a PDF that shoots out during your booking process can help. Also, pretty wise to keep all those curriculum links, because here's what we found. And poor old Jackie at work has discovered this. Come reporting season, like November, they suddenly contact you for your February lesson content and curriculum links. So save it. Really do save it off to one side. They're going to ask you 9 months later, what did we do and what were our curriculum links. I promise you it's well worth the copy and paste and put it into a Google Doc or something somewhere, because that's really important. So that blars on down. It's pretty much the same content over and over. And I just went into, I found that some felt that that wasn't a easy enough timetable. So just like what Dart's doing, creating a pictorial version of the same thing has helped with the settling down of what's happening each day. Some of them are using simply to this timetable from there. And then as you'd expect with anything else, set up with FAQs. Now, in terms of how we going about marketing it, yeah, we're throwing it through the Dart websites, rather wise to do so. We're putting it through socials. Also, we trialed 2 different things this year, partly because Zapier broke. What's Zapier? It's a piece of software that makes one piece of software talk to another piece of software like a handshake, kind of like gaffer tape for software. It sticks them together. Now, the issue was, for some reason, Zapier was breaking for our ticketing system, Humanitix. Humanitix is like Eventbrite, only Humanitix gives away to charity, and we thought that's kind of cool. So what we were doing is we'd go Dart or social to Humanitix, Zapier link to Zoom webinar, shoot it out to them. The reason why we're using Humanitics was not only was it a prettier booking page, there's a capacity to email people far more and send more things around and kind of there's a lot more control from as an events platform. So our first month we had to deal without it, and oh boy, it's fun. Because the issue that we found was, and we had kind of had no choice because Zapier wasn't playing nice to our system. All these students would book, and inevitably someone would change their mind. Oh, my kid really is really, really good. They should be in high school, not in the primary session. And so what we had to do, because Zoom doesn't really let you play, you kind of have to delete the person, or it's not really incredibly flexible from a looking after your customers. So we had to find it's such a crazy workaround. We were actually ourselves paying for their ticket after they paid. It's just a stupid workaround. That's what we had to do to get them into the other session. It was just nuts. It just, we found there was a bit of a pain. Maybe it was us, but there was certainly an issue in February this year that we hadn't seen before because our hookup didn't work. This March this time we're doing that hookup between Humanitics, Zapier, Zoom, and it works. And we're finding it's far more smoother. So lesson is consider using a proper ticketing software and make sure it's hooked to, if you're using Zoom or Teams or whatever it is, that extra layer of cost pays for itself if you're running anything at scale. It actually does. So February we ran a 12 p.m. high school, a 2 p.m. and a 4 p.m. primary. Only because people started asking for, hey, where's my after school session? I'd love to be involved. We found out through survey, and also through by just sheer booking, that yeah, it was lovely in the afternoon, but honestly, the number of times that people would actually show up was pretty limited in the first place. So we actually just dropped it off this March and are just doing a 12 and a 2. Team's much happier. They're not doubling up. They're not doing way more work for effectively no one turning up because they can always look at the recordings later from the 2 p.m. So that's something we're doing right now. So that's it. I hope that sort of helped Karen initially. If you've got any questions about how to run a homeschool webinar-based program, feel free to ask me. But it's been working for 3 years. It's a good thing to keep our team involved. It's also a spectacular way to train your brand new presenters in a safe environment, whereby you might, especially at the start of the year when there's a bit more time around up our sleeves to look after them, and they can cut their teeth every day running content. And that becomes a repository too, by the way, which you can use as training materials because they're recorded for other reasons too. So that's that thing.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Ben. One of the reasons I wanted Ben to just discuss it, because this year I noticed that it was sort of 2 months. It seems to be sort of growing and there was more dates, which means that it was successful enough to continue. And we have had conversations over the last few years about subscription-based learning and having a one price and you get access to a lot, and how that has been working. And we tried it in 2022 with some schools, and it really wasn't as successful as we would have liked, but it's good to see that the model can absolutely work. And I know Ben uses February, March because it is quiet for his team, so he gets to maximize on keeping his team busy and training opportunities as well. And then you've got this amazing variety of content that you can use for on-demand training, sending out before presentations as background material. So, it's just such a great resource to have all of those digital assets that you can use for lots of things. But if you have tried subscription-based programming before, and it maybe didn't quite hit the mark, it's certainly an opportunity to look at again, because it has been successful for the fact that it's now your 3rd year.
And a shout out to the Dart team and their social media platform. So, and I had a look in the behind the scenes of our analytics for the very first time.
So I knew you'd be straight onto it, Ben.
I figured I'd just have a little look. There's a gigantic, you can go have a look later, Bonnie, you'll see there's a gigantic spike. Just nothing, gigantic spike when a program thing, which I deliberately knew that I'd want to put it out at a particular time, like January, set it up in November, so well in advance, and it did exactly as expected.
And you know what else, just listening to you talk then as well, you're right, it does make a big difference. And sometimes we send out a newsletter and you'll see that your event will have a big spike as well because of that. Back to what you're trying to talk about with your subscriptions, maybe there's something we need to just, and it might just be changing the terminology where we have requests, and instead of requests, they are classified as requests or subscriptions. Maybe
That would
just
actually help. I mean, that feels very much now it's all about me. So I'm also aware there's other content providers here too.
yeah, maybe
But
something to take off.
But a subscription-based model does open up other questions as well, around what's possible, for sure. And it's not just, I mean, there's all different versions of subscriptions. It would be then, I suppose, training the audience as to what a subscription means.
Well, we
I
got
guess
them
it's pretty
trained to
easy.
what on demand was, what live was, what's a content provider,
Mm.
what's by request. You know, there's lots of things that we've all had to be,
Yeah.
you know, I used to have to explain what, you know, virtual excursions were, Ben. We're past that.
Well, I mean, honestly, I mean, I think of us as a collective whole. I mean, as Virtual Excursions Australia and the organisations were involved underneath in all this sort of thing, it would be extraordinary to offer, to literally think about all of what we do, to then actually take it as a conglomerate going, oh, did you want to subscribe to Virtual Excursions Australia type whatever programs they are, and all the different, I'm just making stuff up, guys, by the way. So museums, zoos, aquariums, and whatever. And the idea being that if they went, yeah, we want to subscribe to that, and there was some way of divvying out the cash to be able to, for the people who did it, it would be an extraordinary situation. Because I mean, I actually know, I mean, is Tammy still here? She is. There is effectively that in a way through the way CILC works, especially at the school district level, where they effectively buy a bucket load of seats for teachers to use to go to events, and they can spend it wherever they want. And it's another way. So that subscription thing's a deep dive and probably a bit of thinking, but there's something
I
possibly
think
there.
it's another line of discussion. And like you said, we're constantly evolving because that's the world, constantly evolving. So there are things to look at that way. And it also opens up the whole thing that, you know, we don't want to make our teachers pay for things. We think, okay, this is public education. If there's a subscription, maybe there's something we could build into it. And I've spoken to you about it before. I just don't want it to slip off the to-do list because I think it's important.
Thanks for putting
So
in there.
Important for everyone. Yeah.
There could be also a thing, just making stuff up for a moment, just because there's like almost a free for all. Around thinking, there could also be potentially an opportunity to think about: are you a corporate sponsor? Some sort of sponsor splash page. Now you're in a public space though, right? So there may be some rules around this thing. I suspect it might be.
Government position, makes it.
They're going to struggle.
Yeah.
So maybe we then work around the VA.
But I'll tell you
side.
right now what we do as soon as we get a new content provider. One of the onboarding things is now go and join Virtual Excursions Australia. So we always point them to you for those reasons, because there's
all right. That makes sense.
we
We can maybe look at on the VA side, because there could be a way of maybe looking at that subscription model going to organise. We can work that out.
Well, I think it's come up a few times, and that's why I wanted to highlight that the success that you've been having with doing those sort of month programs. That I think it is something that we continue to talk about. So maybe we have a further sort of working group on that later on in the year. But I've noticed that we've just clicked over to 4 o'clock. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Especially a big thanks to Tammy, Darren and Bonnie for sharing all of their amazing knowledge and expertise. It has been absolutely fabulous to have you all here today. And Virtual Excursions Australia, we're here for you. So it's really important as well that when you do have programs, let us know as well. Dart does a great job of doing a lot of those promotions, but we can also promote for you as well. So please let us know if you've got something coming up. We'll share it on our socials. We'll put it into our newsletter for our direct subscribers, and we can help promote that way as well. So absolutely important that you let us know, because I do search, but sometimes if it doesn't pop up, I won't necessarily be able to get it out and share it for everyone else. So a big thank you. We look forward to seeing you all later in the year, and I will share the recording with everyone soon. Thank you all very much.